Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Michelle Saeed, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we're thrilled to have Rick Sedler, the president, CEO, and founder of RMS Media Group, joining us. With over 30 years in luxury publishing, including driving Robb Report's revenue growth as a publisher and senior vice president and founding Elite Traveler for private jet audiences, Rick launched RMS Media Group in Newburyport, Massachusetts to deliver niche magazines like Ocean Home and Luxury Pools Plus Outdoor Living to affluent readers. We'll explore his founding story, how RMS is reshaping luxury media, and his vision for scaling this multi-channel publishing firm. So with that being said, the mic is all yours, Rick. Let's dive in. Welcome to Founders Future.
Thank you. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Great.
Kick things off for our listeners. Take us back to the beginning, Rick. What specific problem within the luxury publishing or media landscape, maybe around reaching affluent audiences or brand partnerships, inspired you to start RMS Media Group?
The first thing is that there really is a small space for expertise in luxury publishing, but there are a lot of ideas. A lot of editors and creative people would love to get involved. And it was really booming, not when I started originally, but after 15 years when I left Robb Report and started this company. It really started to grow and people wanted to get into the space. So we had creatives, you had editorial, you had a lot of the minds behind building a magazine, but they always said, we'll build it and then we'll just get salespeople to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that is that you really have to have sales involved early so that you know that they can sell it. You don't just find them. First of all, they're difficult to find. A lot of them haven't evolved in that space. It's a very small area. And you need to be able to build something and then test whether or not it can be sold. Without it being sold, you have nothing really, unless you get a lot of money. And even then, you're going to waste it unless you integrate sales right from the beginning. So we started with consultation, really were direct and honest about whether or not we could sell it. And if they hired us, they would believe that you guys should know. So is this something you could sell? And if we were excited about it, we'd say, yes, we'll partner with you. If not, maybe they rethink it. Maybe they were stubborn and said, we got this and we're going to go. But that's how we get into the space. We actually started as a virtual sales organization and consulting group for publishers that were going to launch.
Love that. Yeah, no, from
Yeah.
what it sounds like, the offer is pretty multifaceted. So let's get into the nuts and bolts for our listeners and even some potential clients that might be interested as well in the publishing landscape. Walk us through how today RMS Media Group generates revenue. What's the core offer? Is it publishing, media buying services? How do you structure what you do for your clients?
So publishing has changed over the years. It was, of course, the three big radio, television, and publishing years ago. So we've had to really change in the face of changing conditions. And while at the top of that pyramid where we exist, luxury tends to be a little bit older and sophisticated, and people do still read a lot of print publications. A lot of publications have gone by the wayside, budget has shifted. So there's still plenty for those that are involved for us, but we really had to look at what is the value of the business. And by any M&A company that's worked with publishing houses, you realize you have to have really four legs to this business and not just one. So to make it more desirable, we moved into a space which was a natural evolution anyway through digital and through proprietary offerings. We worked with partnerships with other magazines that were a little bit different and unique, like custom publications. For instance, those that publish a magazine for the owners of Bentley, of Ferrari, of Aston Martin, and Bugatti. And
Oh,
so when you're talking about publishing a magazine for Bugatti, we, by the way, got the tap to be able to represent that particular magazine as an exclusive. So it's mailed to roughly 2,500 billionaires, 98% of billionaires. And so there's a lot of luxury brands that wanted to reach that market. So we shifted to move into more digital, but still keep our roots in print. And of course, we do events. We do luxury media buying in addition to our owned and operated books. So the highest percentage is still print. We have a lot of companies that I think probably the biggest reason if somebody say, why are you still in print? is that a lot of our customers are recurring customers. They love it and they use it and it gets results. And so we stay with them and add more to the list. And so really had to shift into four different sectors to get, or divisions, to really get a lot of that opportunity that might have said, no, we don't do print. Sorry, bye. So we would say, we also do digital marketing, and we've really, unlike others, understand what luxury digital marketing is all about. Needed an edge there.
Yeah, no, from what it sounds like, the growth has been incredible. You're diversifying in so many different ways outside of print, and you've built partnerships that have evidently are lasting. Now, on that note, how are you currently acquiring some of your clientele right now? Which channels, whether it is LinkedIn, your industry network, or even some of the trade events, what has been the most effective for landing clients for publications and media services?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously, something we always have to think about. So we do a lot of business through referrals. And we don't really do any kind of mass marketing because there is, for instance, like a lot of companies, if you were to search, I'm going to tackle landscapers, I'm going to market to people that are builders. There are builders that can range from smaller, less expensive homes, and then builders that do multi-million dollar homes.
Mm,
So we look for sources that might help us find only that high-end builder. And they have a special need and a sort of a strengths and needs. We reach people that read our publication and all of our websites and social media, that read for both aspirational and also because this is a source for me to find people that I'm interested at my level to do business with. So we really have to find the high end, and so we have to filter through to find those folks. But we do our own events locally for our North Shore magazine. We attend a lot of events for Ocean Home magazine. We attend pool shows, trade shows, and we really try to really position ourselves as the leader in that particular industry. And oftentimes there's not a lot of other players in the industry. Wanted to find media on fishing or biking or motorcycle. You might find 10, 20 different people in the space, but there aren't too many people. And that's why we like that niche, luxury pools and outdoor living. There's not another book that specializes in reaching people that are interested in subscribing because they want to build a $500,000 pool. So we position ourselves to be the expert or the source of information for that specific.
mm. Love that. No, it's from what it sounds like, you're very disruptive with your messaging and really being selective as well about your ICP and who is going to be like a good fit. It has to be a mutual investment in that sense. I'd love to learn more about your approach to sales because I know something we touched on a little bit in the beginning. What are some of the strategies that have been the most effective in converting some of the leads, these opportunities into long-term clientele? Are you focusing in more on the partnerships, leaning in into a small team? Are you personally driving the sales as a solo operation? How is all of that structured today?
So we have 8 salespeople and we have them cross sell, but they are responsible for each division. And the approach, when I started in a boiler room. I was that, it was on a telephone, but it was that bang on the door, stick your foot, make sure the person can't close it, and then try to pitch and close them before you move to the next house. So I had to do a lot of unlearning over the years, especially with luxury where I started. So it's really, it's an overused word, but it's a consultative approach, really. It's not trying to sell them something, it's trying to understand, first of all, explain what we do. And so, first of all, there should be a leaning in of interest, and then start to talk about how we can help them. We don't talk about anything specific. We ask them what they have in mind, and then we show them some of the places where people in your industry, if it's a retailer or if it's a national, have been successful.
Mm,
And the smarter we are about that knowledge of who is successful, how did they get successful, we just tell them who's successful. And if you think about it, who wouldn't want to stay on the phone and learn who among us is using you and how are they getting success? So it's not a cold call, pressure, sales pitch. It's more of a conversation. And people are typically more apt to engage in a conversation because from the start of it, sometimes we even say, listen, I guarantee you it's not going to be pushy and you're going to learn something from it.
mm,
And so they say, that's a fountain of knowledge. I want to continue the conversation. I want to talk to them again. That's our key to really moving into this space and being successful and having somebody pick up the phone if we call them again.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're able to provide value up front rather than thinking more about that end transaction, you create longevity with the relationships and even
Yeah.
beyond the referrals. So,
Yeah, it is a transaction at the end,
mm,
but when they're ready, it's not doesn't shouldn't start out as a transactional call. So we oftentimes make a call with purpose. If we
mm,
have a magazine from our Lux communication space, which is really media buying, we might
mm,
start off describing something specific. Hey,
mm,
Gulfstream, are you interested in reaching people who drive Bentleys?
mm,
Absolutely.
mm,
We have a magazine. Let me tell you a little bit about our company and how we got involved with Bentley to be able to offer this space. But this is a very something your marketing team may not be familiar, but there's a magazine that goes out to people who drive Bentleys. When they buy a Bentley, they get 4 magazines a quarter. Interested, tell me more. And which leads into what else do you do? Can you do that for Ferraris? Can you do that for other car manufacturers? Reverse engineer. We don't look at, there's been books written about millionaires and the archetype and who, what do rich people buy kind of thing, right? So they find the rich person and they ask them what they buy, right? We find what they buy and we learn about who buys them. So we learn about the Bentley type of people that buy a Bentley, right? We
mm,
don't ask millionaires what car they buy. We find out who buys a Bentley, who buys a Ferrari. So we become really knowledgeable about the not only the demographics, but you drive a Bentley, you can take your media kit with all kinds of demographics and boring information and throw it out the door because they
mm,
say, yes, we want to reach Bentley owners. That's the end of that conversation, right? So we talk about the psychographics of the Bentley owner and would they likely fly on a private jet, buy a jet. And so let's just say it's the best sales pitch we've ever made. They're going to tell us people buy Bentleys that own Bentleys that fly on a Gulfstream, right?
mm,
So it's a connection. And then you
mm,
work on that connection like a partnership.
mm.
So nothing is forced because if we force something and get a sale, we might not get another sale. We'll have one sale, and that's not what we're all about. We have had clients from the day I opened the business over 20 years. So that's the goal, is to think that you'll never lose them. And if you believe that with that mentality, you'll work hard to every day, with every call, with every transaction, to think this is not going to end. This is
Mm.
going to continue. And how do I make decisions based on this client? Create a scenario where the client never wants to leave.
Yeah, no, and it's that law of assumption that you can help them and you're able to solve for some of those challenges that they might be experiencing. But I think it was really cool for you to mention, especially the this aspect of social proof and leveraging that and really leaning into the customer persona,
Yeah.
especially with you reverse engineering what the models are going to look like with every partner that you come across. And that sort of knowledge and that sort of intellectualism, it resonates because it shows that you're the expert, evidently. Now, building on this growth, from what it sounds like, there's a ton of momentum with really just like your LinkedIn following and everything that you've done, at least within publishing and really getting out there on the event side of things. For the listeners and for some of the entrepreneurs that are looking to get into branding and into the media publishing space, but they're trying to find their footing, if you can share maybe a bottleneck that might maybe stands out for you right now, what would it be? Is it securing more high value add contracts, scaling your team on the fulfillment side? What are you most focused on solving right now to keep up this momentum?
What I'm following, really spending a lot of effort on right now is the process. And I started it a little bit before AI just exploded. And so, had I known that AI was coming in so strong, I wouldn't have changed anything because I was on that path anyway. But I certainly would have been thinking, how do I get the team through a process? And these really two main pieces of this process is the revenue power, they call them power plays, the revenue power play and the fulfillment. So we really have to spend time to, of course, always build the revenue, but make that process so that it's more streamlined. And that's a culture shift. Salespeople tend to say, this is how I do it. And you have to say, no, the whole team's going to do it this way because we feel this is the, after you get through the initial process, you're going to really love how smooth this can become. And then on to the fulfillment and get them really streamlined and build the process. So the whole organization has undergone this big process shift because you just can't really scale if your business is not able to keep up. And if you were to add people, which I believe is a mistake that I've made and other people make, If your people are operating really and truly after you see the process kick in at 60 or 70%, and then you add new people, you're adding new people who look at the culture and look at the way things done, and they too will be at 70% because
Mm.
that's what they think, that's what you've set up.
Yeah.
So if we can change, and AI has been a really big part of helping that move along quicker. So
Mm.
you can't just say, let's get more sales and then we'll figure it out later. You have to say, are we ready for more sales?
Mm.
Can we sell it? And then can the back end handle it? So that's really what I've been working on a lot is to earn and expect that you will get sales as long as you're ready and prepared to have sales by not just throwing more bodies onto in the organization, which becomes costly.
Yeah, scaling with sustainability, and
Yeah.
that's what it comes down to.
Just
Really.
the process is broken down so specific
Mm.
that, and the way it was described to me is if an alien flew into your kitchen and said, I want to make a bowl of cereal, you'd say, just grab the cereal and put it in the bowl and the milk's in the fridge. And the
Mm.
alien would say, what's a cereal? What's a fridge? So that silver shiny thing, you open the door, there's a white bottle, it's a
Mm.
quart. Grab it, put it on the counter. The cereal is, describe it. The bowl is where on the shelf. And
Mm.
that's how I had everyone in the company describe what they do. Somebody
Mm.
just left on maternity leave. That playbook goes into the hands of the new person.
Mm.
And theoretically, the way you want to design it is within 4 hours, that person should know exactly what to do without asking anyone.
Mm.
So not only is it for the new person, we're adding staff, but it helps with the person that's actually doing it. I didn't
Mm.
realize all this stuff. Once I wrote it down, boy, it changed everything. I got to fix this. And you put a timer on everything. How long does it take you to do that? It shouldn't. Are you using this or that? Or how can we make it more efficient? Yeah,
Mm.
scaling's a big part of the growth. You got to
Mm.
be ready for it.
Yeah, and you have to make sure essentially the foundation has no cracks, starts from the top.
Yeah.
Now, with everything you've accomplished, really establishing Ocean Homes as like the premier ocean front lifestyle magazine, what's top of mind? What's that runway look like right now for growing RMS Media Group over the next 6 to 12 months?
We're looking at some of the things that we just looked at as an add-on. We're going to create an email newsletter. Great. But the email newsletter is, if you put some time and effort into thinking how you could expand that, grow the number of subscribers, grow the offerings. In the case of Ocean Home, we added a home of the week. We
Mm.
also use social media to build it. So what we're trying to do is build a bundle. And so if somebody were to come in and do a print ad, they might say it didn't work. How do you know it didn't work? Because I didn't get any calls. It's when I started, there was an 800 number before websites, believe it or not. And somebody would say, hi, I'm looking at this beautiful home. It's in Ocean Home Magazine. I want to talk to you about it. No one, almost no one, looks at an ad and then goes straight to the phone. They usually go online. They
Mm.
might have social proof with the particular realtor. They might do a Google search. They're certainly going to go to the listing, to the website of the person they're going to call, and they're going to learn a lot about it. And then they'll make a call or send an email. Really need to wrap other things around it that they can see through the metrics, the analytics, and social media can do it, and email can do it. How many people looked at it? How many people went to your site? How many people viewed it? How many people shared it? All that's really important because we now own that information that we share with them. With
Mm.
print, we have to rely on them doing a good job of tracking it. We have no idea once that book goes out. So you can
Mm.
put QR codes, you can do a lot of things. But if you build a bundle, which gives you the best chance of success overall, people tend to say, let's do the bundle again. Because
Mm.
we might caution them that sometimes in sales you need 7 calls. It's the seventh call that gets them to buy. Sometimes when you're making a purchase, you've looked at something for three, four, five, 6 times. And
Mm.
when you see it again, you say, I'm going to finally do this. So
Mm.
when you have in this vertical, when you have multiple places where they have seen it, there's
Mm.
a better chance that person's going to act on that campaign and they'll want to continue it. You can't
Mm.
rely on doing it for 6 months. In the days of just print, it takes 3 or 4 months. Who wants
Mm.
to hear it takes 3 months if they've already spent 20 or 30,000, right? It's just really understanding the market and understanding the type of buyer. And I started cold calling people for
Mm.
a listing section in Robb Report. And it was jets, it was expensive homes,
Mm.
yachts, and cars. Unlike books like The Millionaire Next Door, that surveys the people on their list based on wealth,
Mm.
ask them what they buy. I was calling on what they own and figuring out who they were. So I understood their persona. I understood that there's no way that you can look at millionaires and define it. Lots
Mm.
of posts on social media that I happen to comment on. People that are millionaires buy these cars. No, you can't say that.
A
People
lot
aren't buying people aren't buying luxury anymore. Really? How did LVMH founder of CEO
of.
become before Elon Musk just 6 months ago? How did he become the wealthiest person on the planet if people aren't buying luxury? There's a lot of shifts that happen, misinformation that travels its own path, and everyone jumps on it and gets a lot of likes, so they replace it. But knowing intimately, selling $500 million, so selling personally, managing, owning a company, $500 million of advertising space. And in the early days, I estimated talking to 10,000 millionaires and hearing their stories. It is not something that you can describe in terms of who is a millionaire. Somebody in my hometown that I grew up with that nobody knew. I say nobody knew. Of course, he had friends and everything, but generally you'd say his name there. I don't know if I remember him. Smart, went on to a private school after and disappeared from anyone knowing what he was doing. And all of a sudden he announced he's buying the Celtics, the Boston Celtics, for the highest price team in history.
Mm.
A local guy, nobody would ever say, "Oh, that guy's going to be a billionaire," or "This is what a billionaire looks like," or "This is what a guy worth 10 million or 20 or 100 million." They're all different.
Yeah.
And so people really, and so knowing that kind of information, you can imagine if I'm talking to a marketer, how valuable that is. So we have to have a why us, a reason for, or what do you know, or what haven't I heard before? Are you like somebody else? And they like the perspective.
You nailed it right on the dot. The segmentation, it's vast, and you have to not use almost like a templated approach when it comes to really like the fulfillment side of it.
Yeah.
So, no, I love that. Let's get a bit hypothetical because I love that we're with this conversation, you have a passion for luxury media. If you
Yeah.
had a genie in the room, Rick, you rubbed the lamp and poof, now you have all these unlimited resources. What would you implement immediately to accelerate RMS Media Group's growth today?
We can get a little comfortable because it's a small space and sometimes big clients
Mm.
and think that we're doing well. But I think I would look at what anyone that owns or cares about is interested in luxury,
Mm.
those name brands, and really go after those brands and do it in a way that we would have to scale up considerably in order to handle those kinds of companies. Typically, it's a big team that goes in, and they need to be handled in such a way that you give them optimal customer service. You can go in and convince them. That's on the selling side, but you can lose them because of your lack of ability to handle a client that big. So that would be my goal, is just to go to we already have a few blue chip Fortune 100 companies, but
Mm.
it would be to literally go after every one of them.
Yeah, no, the sky's the limit, and you've established yourself within such a niche market as the experts. Hopefully, now with a lot of what you're doing on the fulfillment side and really getting out there with your referrals and your networking, the future is not far away. Now, one more question on this front, and we'll wrap up with a lightning round. How do you see the luxury publishing industry evolving in the coming years, especially with, as we discussed, your focus on more niche audiences and then also digital channels? How is RMS Media Group positioning itself for that type of future?
So it starts off with making connections, and it's one of those connections that you don't make it to sell them something. You don't make a connection because you have something immediate. It's just, here's what we do. I want to talk to you because there's some natural synergies here that might just get to know you, what you do, and just so that they think of you in something that might be a good fit. And it's not a let me throw them a bone. It's more of, many times it's a need, and who can I get that can help me with this problem? So just recently we had a call from somebody that is involved in startups, and they're launching it's a video and audio specifically for they sold it to Mercedes-Benz, so it's specifically for Mercedes-Benz, so that Mercedes has their own channel and they can control, curated from the driver's experience. Which news do you like? Tell me which sports do you like? And so it'll play when the car is still on video, and it will stop video and play audio when they're driving. And so they can have their own Mercedes-Benz tuned to their lifestyle radio station. And so we've been asked to help them sell the advertising that goes on that station. So because we sold Mercedes-Benz custom publication years ago, and because we currently have a lot of the luxury and automobile custom publications, that's an example of how it's going to evolve. Mercedes dropped their magazine years ago. Some of the smaller production companies and really upscale have kept them. But if we did the magazine and got a lot of advertisers to fill the magazine, wouldn't
Mhm.
we then be understanding the kind of advertiser that would not only want to buy, but oftentimes the brand has final approval on whether or not they want that brand mixed in with the magazine, or in this case, this video audio. And a lot of people make the mistake of just calling some of their people that they had sold before or calling a brand. No, that's not a good fit. It has to match the lifestyle, right? So we know how to do that and we deliver, and it saves a lot of frustration and time. So moving into the future, and in some cases, if a brand moves away from print and goes into this radio, that's probably my best example, and it's just recent, of how we can evolve. We have to change in these changing conditions and not be looking at somebody else doing something in this is also AI driven space, but
Mhm.
step up our knowledge, look at how we have to become familiar with it in case something like this comes up.
Really just evolving the best practices and not pulling up old hat tricks, really.
Yeah, it's you just I used to have a client every time he called me, he would say, "Hey Rick, what's new?" And I would
Mhm.
say, "Hey, not much. What's new with you?" And he would say, "No, tell me what's new."
Yeah.
And when you are a consultative, we know the media business. Some clients used to say, listen, I know how to sell cars. I don't know anything about the media business. That's why I'm coming to you. You have a responsibility to, if you want to continue with them, to really talk about what's happening so that they, when they call, they want to learn more about what's going on, maybe something new that they should do. So every time that phone rang and I saw that caller ID, I think, I got to come up with something new. He
Yeah.
calls me all the time and I've already told him everything. What do I tell him?
Mhm.
Every time he wanted to know what was new. That certainly helped me prepare for it, describing what's new in the company for the team and everything. What are we going to do? What's new?
Yeah. That's a good friend right there.
Yeah, yeah.
Your toes. Love that. Now, for the listeners, entrepreneurs, and founders that are, as we had mentioned earlier, looking to really follow in your footsteps, what's the best piece of advice you would give to them just starting out, especially those that are diving into some of the more niche fields like luxury publishing, per se?
Yeah. The I This is the one thing I wrote down and thought this might be nice to just I was so proud of it. I thought I'm going to read from this to make sure I don't mess it up. Let me just find it for a second. That's the problem with having four screens,
I
right?
know we know it's going to be good.
Oh, you built it up. Okay. So my advice is there's a lot of people that say go with your passion, right? And to my knowledge, there's no website or podcast that talks about failures. You only
Mhm.
hear somebody followed their passion, tell me your story, and I'm a success. But there's a lot of people that follow their passion and they know what they, for instance, a med spa, maybe they know everything about the cosmetic part of it, right? They don't know how to run a business. So they're passionate about doing that, but they don't know how to run a business. So my advice is don't just build what you can make, build what you can sell. If you can sell it, then you should do it. If it's just your passion, it may not always work. Now, if you can combine building something that's your passion that you're good at, that's terrific. But and success is not just sticking it out longer than most people, is just sticking it out longer than most people will. And I often use the analogy that an automotive back in the day, steam automotive, creates steam at 212 degrees.
Mhm.
If you create a temperature of 211 degrees, it goes
Mhm.
nowhere.
Mhm.
You're 1 degree off from moving 100 ton or whatever the weight is, hundreds of tons locomotive, but it won't go anywhere until you
Mhm.
get to 212. So the biggest thing that I looked at and I wondered, and I know people are thinking, how long should I do this? Because all of a sudden you're at 211, you don't have anything.
Yeah.
And then you start producing steam. You have to figure out exactly what you're going to do to get to that point. And unfortunately, in some cases, I have personal friends that pushed and pushed and never gave up. And they didn't have their model, they didn't have their pricing, they didn't sell enough, and they got into a financial bind. It's just that awareness, seeking help and understanding. Am I onto something? Am I in a rut and I can't sell and I'll come out of it? Am I going to
Mm,
hit the 212? Or should I just give up before I really force myself into a financial hole? But
mm,
people always ask, did I ever think of quitting? And actually, I never did. And just never thought of quitting. I may have had some times that were bad days and say, what am I doing? I had life. I was working at Robb Report, flying in private jets, five-star hotel. We had an image to uphold. And now I'm going to be broke. I put some money together, and the idea was that I would work it until I started to get sales to come in, and I had to do it before the money ran out. And so when it was close, sure, I thought, but I always said, nope, doesn't matter. My
mm.
wife would ask me, are you sure this is going to work? And I said, honey, if it doesn't, we'll just move into my parents' basement. And she said, you better make this work.
Yeah, tonight. Wow.
Sometimes you need that scare to keep you going. Yeah, I there's a lot of advice. Go, don't quit, don't quit. And I say be careful with that because there are times when you should quit. It
Mm,
means you could pivot if you're not on the right track, if it's not something that can be sold, or if you're not a salesperson. Fortunately, I was a salesperson. I grew a sales team. So for me to start a company, I naturally went into the what can I sell? I'm going to be selling what I sold before, and I'm confident I can do that. And so the business was based on something that I had done before, but it was my own business. And
mm,
I created magazines, which in the early days, I was talking to people about and consulting with them about whether or not it could be sold. So I had a lot of people asking about whether or not it could be sold. And of course, they tested it. So when I started my own, I pretty much knew what we were capable of. So combination of being able to sell, finding out this was sellable before we launched it.
mm,
And for our business, you have a legal pad, and in 60 days, you're going to create a magazine.
mm,
That means you've got a photography, writers, designers, print it and sell it and fill it with ad pages and
mm.
collect the money.
Yeah.
So, creating a small business and starting a business has a huge failure rate. Starting a print publication has even a greater one. So, what did I do? Started a business printing magazines. In the end, I'm thinking I'm at that saying, if you can make it in New York, make it here, you can make it anywhere. That's kind of the way I felt about doing the magazine business. But not to say they weren't failures along the way, but where are you in the end?
Mm,
I often think of casinos. They got a 51-49% edge over
mm,
losing, just a small percentage.
mm,
I always talk to people who ask, it's a very small percentage. It could happen tomorrow. And when advertising, you could say, I haven't gotten anything. My
mm,
longest running, continuously running advertiser was with us at Robb Report for 25 years. I left, he stayed in,
mm,
and he said, I'm tired of placing an ad in one place, saying it doesn't work, and then finding something else. I'm spending so much money doing one time shots. Maybe I need to do it with more frequency. I said,
mm,
you absolutely need to do. He said, I'm going to do it for a whole year.
mm.
You're my last shot. This is it. I got to do it here. And so for 3 months, I kept calling him, and he said, I haven't gotten anything. And
Wow.
finally, he said, I made a sale. And then he made another sale. And
Yeah.
he continued for 25 years,
Wow.
selling 25 to 50 to even $75,000 fully trained German Shepherd protection dogs.
Yeah.
I said, 50,000.
Mm,
My little AKC registered pup is not the same. He said, it's very close. The difference is I give him a PhD. How much do you
mm.
think that costs? So he keeps them and trains them so that they do amazing things. But anyway, I guess the moral of the story is that yes, consistency is important. At some point, if this guy didn't decide to stay in for a year, he wouldn't be in for 3 years with it not working. He would have to say, I got to pull the plug. But 1 month is not enough.
Yeah, very well said. Consistency being that principle, but also being being practical and almost like a realist with, and I think that's the thing that a lot of entrepreneurs miss is the validation aspect is, do you have a market? Do you know the pain points? And can your solution really solve those issues? And if you're able to get in the room and have those conversations, then that's the first step. And then it's the consistency aspect, even when times get hard. So you're living proof of that, Rick. Really wonderful, inspiring work that you've done. And on that note, that wraps up another inspiring episode of Founders Future. Again, thank you so much for sharing your remarkable journey with us today. Evidently, so many transformative years at Robb Report and founding Elite Traveler, building RMS Media Group in Massachusetts, and connecting luxury brands with affluent audiences. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can get in touch with Rick via LinkedIn, and you can also find some more resources and insights at closers.io, where we're dedicated to helping businesses accelerate their growth through trained appointment setters and world-class sales systems. Until then, keep climbing, and we'll see you all in the next one.